Welcome back to another Professional Picks NFL video. Woj and I put out our targets for fantasy football, and today we're kind of shifting focus to some more NFL future-based content. This video focusing mainly on Super Bowl odds and just looking at some of our favorite picks and some value out there on other teams. So we'll just
Definitely.
jump right into it. We got the Super Bowl odds for the entire NFL here.
Yeah,
So
no
Woj,
surprise
yeah,
you
go
see
ahead.
the Chiefs and the no surprise you see the Chiefs and the Niners here. Both the favorite of each conference. Obviously, they've met, I think, two of the last five Super Bowls, these guys, albeit with different quarterbacks in San Francisco. Quickly behind those two, you got the other, let's say, top contenders in the conference with the Ravens and the Lions. And then you see Eagles are there as they have been, but then Texans at the third best odds in the AFC is kind of surprising to me. I guess they're tied with the Bengals, but they're just listed first, and the Bills. So a lot of teams stacked to the AFC. But what are your takeaways from this right off the bat, Slee?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is going off of last season. And I mean, you already mentioned it. Chiefs and Niners, they've been in the matchup for two of the last five Super Bowls. And I mean, the Chiefs pretty much continually make it year over year, besides that one year Joe Burrow stayed healthy against the Rams. But yeah, I mean, I'm not really too surprised. I think the Texans are that one newer team kind of in the mix, and then the Lions as well. But I do think the odds seem pretty fair, and honestly, the more I look into it, it's hard for me to convince myself somebody outside of like the top 10 is really gonna have a chance to win it all this year. What do you think?
Yes, I think that's kind of the way the NFL has been trending lately. It happens every now and then, but it used to be you have a chance to be a little bit more of a long shot to make it. Now it seems like the way teams are built and really the way quarterbacks have evolved in the NFL, you need a top tier quarterback and a solid defense, or you're not going to win the Super Bowl. And it's not even you can have a good quarterback. You need to have a quarterback playing elite football Super Bowl or win it. So it precludes a lot of teams, and it's the main reason why the 49ers haven't been able to secure a Super Bowl in these last few attempts is because the quarterback play has not been up to snuff. I'm with you. I think the only team that could possibly, a few teams actually could do it. I think the Jets have a decent shot if Aaron Rodgers sticks together, just because of how elite their defense is. And Rodgers has been there before. They got pretty great talent at wide receiver and running back. But to your point, it's a long shot there. I don't truly believe that could happen. But if I'm trying to have a more of a Cinderella bet and stretch my dollar 18 times, that might be a team I would throw it on. And I think this year, the Jets are my pick to win the division out in the AFC East. And you can see by the odds, I think the odds makers are putting that in factor because the Jets have better odds than the Dolphins do. Um, they have a better defense, as we talked about. Their offense with Rodgers probably isn't quite as comparable to the Dolphins, but still should be solid with the way that Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson have been able to produce without Rodgers on the field.
Yeah, no, I
What?
I do like the Jets. I mean, you are taking a risk on Rodgers staying healthy. He did say this has been his the toughest offseason, toughest OTAs. I mean, hopefully he could stay on the field this year. But yeah, I mean that AFC East division's just brutal. I mean, I could easily see the Dolphins, Bills, or Jets winning the division. I know Dolphins did have some departures on the defensive side of the ball this offseason, so the odds makers are definitely weighing that in here. But
Who do
I think another,
you? Sorry, you're gonna say what you're gonna say, but also I want to hear one of these teams that are pretty good odds, like let's say sub plus 2,000, that you just would not touch.
oh, interesting. Well,
I
I
have one
mean,
of those teams. I have two of those teams actually.
yeah, I mean the
Three?
first one that comes to mind is the Bengals.
Hmm.
I don't think defensively they can really hang with these other teams, kind of in the top six, seven, or eight. I think they're the weakest defense of all of that like top tier of teams.
Yeah,
So I would leave them off
without a
the
doubt.
group, and then I'd probably even leave. I mean, I know they're at the tail end, but I would probably leave Dallas off too, just because they're going to be so reliant on CeeDee Lamb this year, and he hasn't even begun to practice with the contract holdout. Um, relying on Dak to do something that he hasn't yet. But the defense is good, but I just don't see them being way better than they have been the last few years.
I agree with you. Dallas was definitely one of the teams that I had in mind for that question. Their defense is, they were the fourth best PFF defense in the league last year. Can argue they're going to get better. They're a really good looking unit. It's the offense that leaves me questions because I don't think they can really get much higher than where they've been in the past couple seasons. Their running back room is much worse than it's ever been in the last 5 years. Now with Zeke again being the number one guy and um, an undrafted running back as their backup and kind of the complement to Zeke. And now that you have a little thinner wide receiver room, it is going to be a lot more CeeDee Lamb. Hoping to see Jake Ferguson step up at tight end, pick up a bigger role there. But again, I haven't seen it from Dak Prescott, where when Dallas plays really good teams, when Dak Prescott plays really good defenses, whether it's regular season or in the playoffs, they do not show up, especially in the playoffs. And I just would not be touching that Cowboys team. I also don't think I would bet on the Texans here. While they had a great last season and they're an amazing team roster wise, I don't think they're. And this is the gamble here. Are they on the same level as all the teams that are above them or even behind them in some cases? I personally don't think so. It hasn't happened. You haven't seen it yet. No, that's the leap of faith you take. They have a ton of young, great, talented players on both sides of the football. And then they got Stephon Diggs in the offseason. Do they take the leap this year? The odds makers certainly think they should be,
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're
but
set
I
up
wouldn't be
for it, but
touching it. I
still
don't
a young
think,
team. I think
yeah,
they're more comparable in my mind to the Green Bay Packers. Like very young
yeah,
team, a lot of promise, but
it's a
while it's
great
only a
point.
300 point difference,
A
several
lot of teams
teams in
in
between.
between them though, but yeah, I
Right.
think it's a great parallel.
But yeah. Any long shots? I know I said probably stick it to like the top 10. I mean, the more I'm looking at the list, the Browns are like I could always convince myself on the Browns as long as Miles
That's what
Garrett's
I was gonna
there.
say. That was my pick for if you really had to make me take a long shot. I would say the Browns, and I'll tell you immediately why it's a bad pick. It's because they're in such a tough division with the Ravens and the Bengals. A slightly more realistic long shot would be the Jaguars because
Yeah, that's a great line for the Jag. I mean, I
it,
guess it is Super Bowl odds, but
they're a tough. They need a lot of help, especially on the defense side of the football. But um, you, they're going to win their division, or they very well should win their division. So that's why the Browns is not a good of a take because the Browns need to win 11 games to get basically the wild card. Like they're
yeah,
not going to beat the Ravens, the Bengals. And now I can see the Browns doing better than the Bengals in the regular season, especially given Joe Burrow's injury history with the offensive line. But it's not likely anyways. So it's tough. And same thing happens with the AFC East here, the Dolphins. Like they need to in same conference as the Browns, they need to win 10, 11 games, probably not that, probably 11 games to win that wild card. It's tough.
yeah. I mean, I will say the AFC is tougher right now, or at least last
Without a
year.
doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, you're getting the Atlanta Falcons having better odds significantly than the Browns. Like those two teams are drastically different in my mind.
Yeah, and I do think so. I know we keep talking about the Texans, but the Jaguars made the playoffs the year before. Young quarterback Trevor Lawrence. I just feel like everybody was kind of expecting them to make that big jump this last season, and they didn't. Like I could
No.
just see something similar happening in Houston. They do have a better defense, better coached, but
Yes,
I mean
yeah.
you're expecting a big progression across the board.
I also just realized that you should correct me. When I said the Jags are going to win the division. That was so stupid. The Texans are winning the division.
I mean they should, yes, but
Yeah, I don't
I
know
don't know.
why. Didn't click with me. You should have corrected me
I think
immediately.
that division's like gonna be sneaky competitive.
It always is.
I think the Colts are gonna be pretty good this year. I mean, not the Titans, but between Colts, Jags, and Texans, I think
The
they're
Colts
gonna.
are always very competitive within the division too, but to your point, I think they're sneaky competitive as a maybe above average football team this year with AR-15.
Yeah, we'll see if he could stay healthy. But all right, let's get into our
Go to our picks.
specific
Yeah.
picks.
So I'll
First
start it out
team.
here. I
I'll
think if
start
I
with you.
had to take a pick with some value, it's the Ravens. Value, yeah, 10 to 1 for a team this good, I think is definitely there. I last year I bashed the Ravens, then I came around to them, and then I kind of bashed them again. And that's because what I've seen. is the limitation of this team is that their playoff performance in the past, and when I say they, it's really Lamar Jackson because the team comes and goes with Lamar Jackson. He has failed to step up in the playoff games, especially when it comes to playing the Chiefs. I think if the Ravens can go the entire playoffs without facing the Chiefs, they will win the Super Bowl. Now, if they face Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, I don't believe they're going to win that game. So if somehow, some way they don't face off with the Chiefs in the AFC Championship or even in the divisional round, I think the Ravens will win the Super Bowl. This is a team that had a top two defense last year, only behind the Jets and just barely behind them. And then they had a top five offense. Like that doesn't happen when you get a top five offense with a top five defense. They were the second best team overall behind the 49ers in terms of PFF grade. They got Derrick Henry, where that's an upgrade at running back. Now, granted, Derrick Henry is old. It's going to be, I'm not expecting him to be 2,000 rushing yards, Derrick Henry, but he's still a good running back, and he was playing behind quite literally the worst offensive line in the NFL last year in Tennessee. He's going to look better than he was last year. You have Lamar Jackson, that's the reigning MVP, still playing a good game and relying a little bit less on his legs and relying more on his great receivers and including tight end Mark Andrews, but also Zay Flowers, who's really stepped up as a young guy at Boston College and kind of the slot Z receiver role, and even Rashad Bateman when he's healthy makes a difference on the field. The one thing with this offense is that they kind of have a sliding offensive line performance, still above average offensive line, but it's not the elite offensive line play that we're used to expecting out of a Baltimore unit. Invariably, the one thing that always hurts the Ravens is injuries. It happens every single year somehow. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the way they practice, the way they play, or just bad luck, but it happens every time. If this team can manage to stay healthy, they have a really good shot at having the best record in the NFL, having a bye and having a great road to the AFC Championship, where I still think they could beat the Chiefs. It's just that Lamar Jackson is he's not so one-dimensional, but he's one-dimensional enough. He lacks that passing element enough where Steve Spagnuolo, who's the best defensive coordinator in the game out there in Kansas City, exploits that and makes him throw the football in ways that he doesn't want to. So if Lamar Jackson can either take a little bit of step up in the passing game with the more and more talented receiving core that he's getting, I actually really like the Ravens prospects this year.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on it, but their weapons, at least at the start of the season, are going to be a lot better. I mean, Mark Andrews got hurt early last year. Having him back is one of the top options at the tight end position. And then, like you said, Derrick Henry. I mean, their running back personnel wasn't great last year. I mean,
They never
Lamar,
had it. It never
and
happens.
for a team that's so rush heavy, like kind of leaning on Gus Edwards,
It's always Gus
it's
Edwards,
just
J.K. Dobbins tears his ACL before season starts every year. Gus Edwards and whoever the third string running back in is get a healthy dose. Lamar Jackson's going to run for 700, 800 yards. It's the same story every year. It seems like it could be a little bit different with Derrick Henry,
yeah,
who's
like
just
I
built
mean,
like a
right.
machine.
We're still relying on these guys to stay healthy, but if
Yeah,
they do, the offense should be a lot better even than it was last year.
yeah, yeah. But let's take a look at your pick. What are you thinking?
Yeah, so I'm coming over to the NFC where I feel a little bit safer getting to avoid the Chiefs until the Super
Very
Bowl
fair.
game, as you mentioned. But I'm going with the Lions. Last year was their breakout season, making the playoffs and winning their first playoff game in our entire lifetimes. But this team has offensive firepower, relying on that offensive line, who arguably or probably is the best offensive line in the
They
entire
are. They
NFL.
definitely are. Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, I mean, we've seen it like with how good Dallas was the last decade when they had that off dominant offensive line, just consistently at the top of the NFL in the run game. And the Lions, I know I'm jumping to like fantasy stats here, but Montgomery and Gibbs were both top 10 fantasy running backs last year.
That's wild.
Only team in the NFL to do it, and probably the only team in the NFL to do it in a while. But having two studs in the backfield, Montgomery being more your goal line power back, and then Gibbs does pretty much everything Montgomery doesn't.
Yep.
Behind that O line, I think they're just set up to at least have a productive offense every single game. Jared Goff has improved in Detroit and pretty much proven he's a good quarterback, especially when he has an offensive line that good. If he has got time to throw the ball, he's accurate. Yes, he's not like going to be an improviser scrambling, but behind that O line, he usually doesn't need to be. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, Amon-Ra has proved himself as one of the top receivers. Sam Laporta made a huge jump forward, and then we are relying on Jamison Williams to improve. But if he does live up even close to that first round grade where they took him at, I think this offense should be great and just on par as where they were last year. And then to add on to that, they got Terrion Arnold, um, also corner number one, kind of their weak spot the last few seasons on the back end. You got Younger in the secondary. You got Ennis Rakestraw from Mizzou. So they added some depth in the secondary, and I think they're more of a complete team this year, not going to rely as heavily on just outscoring the opponent. Cons, I do have wide receiver depth. Right now, wide receiver three on the Lions is Khalif Raymond. I don't know much
Yeah.
about him. He's a 30-year-old,
Mhm.
but like if Amon-Ra goes down, um, and they're relying on Jamison Williams and Laporta to kind of lead the passing offense, I think things could get pretty rough for them. So they are a little thin in the wide receiving room, and then their kicker is a guy from the UFL. He got released by the
Yeah, it's gonna be
Texans
big. It's gonna be
years
a big one
ago.
for them.
So I mean, we saw it with the Bears. I'll never forget it when Cody
Who
Parkey's double
would?
doink. But yeah, you could be the best team in the NFL, and if you can't get those free points on manageable kicks, it could ruin you, especially in the playoffs.
Yeah, I like this pick a lot. Honestly, I was thinking about picking the Lions too. It's really going to ride on their defense, I feel like, which, wasn't a top unit in the NFL last year by any means, but they held their own. Like you said, they got some defensive improvement in a couple areas. Um, Aiden Hudson is one of the best DNs in football, and he continues to get better. We'll see what the defense can do. And then if Jameson Williams can play like the first round wide receiver they expect him to be, that's going to be really scary. Like you said, they don't have the depth of the number three, but if Williams can be a first round talent, like kind of on par with the other Alabama wide receivers that got drafted in the first round, this is going to be a very scary 1-2 combo between Williams and St. Brown. Not to mention you got Laporta, who basically is your stand-in wide receiver three that any team would love to have. That would be get some really fun two wide receiver sets, set Laporta out wide, send out Gibbs from the backfield, and then that's just a matchup nightmare wherever you look at it. So a lot of fun Ben Johnson's going to have coordinating his offense this year as he did last year, and we'll see if he can continue to build upon that momentum that you mentioned. Um, but I also like the Lions here. I think they're a lock is how you say it. I'd love these guys to at least make the NFC Championship. It really seemed hard to me that they wouldn't do it.
Yeah, I mean, you
They
brought up a
just
good point with Ben Johnson too. I mean, it's not often offensive coordinators turning down head coaching jobs. Keeping that
special team here.
consistency at the coaching level when your offense was already at the top of the league last year. I mean, hopefully they don't miss a beat stepping in. We'll
Yeah,
see.
you know what? Even as a Bears fan, it's fun seeing these guys succeed. Honestly,
I
it's a
know
fun team.
the fan base deserves it over there.
They do. They really do.
All right. Just back to our Super Bowl odds one more time. I know we went into it pretty in depth before we got to our picks. Anything else you
No,
want
it's
to
just
add?
good to see the Bears on this list, albeit a pretty
I
big.
know.
But
That's what I was thinking too.
I think we covered a lot there. I'd say another team I really wouldn't touch is the Bills. I mean, their defense is getting worse. They still have a good defense, but it's not great like it used to be. What the Bills need to do in order to warrant this spot at plus 1,500 is Keon Coleman, the rookie wide receiver, really needs to step up. You need to see some great offensive line play. You need to see James Cook be extremely versatile out of the running back position. And you need Josh Allen to minimize the mistakes and really play like an MVP quarterback. Otherwise, if all those things don't happen, I don't see how the Bills are warranted in this spot. I'm not touching them this year. But they really need that wide receiver one void to be filled, and they need it quickly. Because
Yeah,
again, this is a tough division with the Jets and the Dolphins right behind them.
yeah. I'm going with our comparisons. I mean, Bills, Cowboys, I don't see how either of them are any better than they've been the last few
They took a
years.
step back. Both teams did.
Exactly.
You know,
So I think you're better off going with like the Packers or the Jets who show a little bit more promise,
more
added new
upside
guys
without a
to the
doubt.
team.
At least you have hope with those teams, and this not to disparage any fan bases, but. at least you can lie to yourself and be like, well, this hasn't happened. Things just haven't clicked. I think everything has clicked for the Bills at one point or another, and they still haven't won. And I think the Cowboys too. I think their best days with the unit they have, at least the Bills for sure is behind them. The Cowboys, that defense can be pretty special. We'll see there. I think you have a better odds taking the Cowboys given how weak the NFC
I agree.
conference is and how elite their defense has this potential to be. I love Mike Zimmer, the new defensive coordinator there.
Yeah, no, I like it. Let's leave it
All right, let's see.
off on that
Okay,
note.
check back in at the end of the year. See, I
Yeah,
think I'll
see
be
how we're doing.
happy if either Lions or the Ravens win, regardless of our bets. I think those are two teams that would be excited to see and refreshing to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, for sure. Two teams that, especially the Lions, haven't been there in a little while, and yeah, just want to see either one pull it out. But all right,
You
that's it
got
for the
it.
Super Bowl odds. Stay tuned for our player award video coming out.
Yep. Until next time.